Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into some of the most awkward, realistic, and downright unsettling stories shared online. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get right into the first one. I've lived in this cul-de-sac in Oak Creek for 3 years. It's the kind of place where the most exciting thing that happens is someone forgetting to bring their trash cans in on a Tuesday. I'm 31, a data analyst working remote, which is basically code for I've forgotten what sunlight feels like. My office is a spare bedroom overlooking the street, and my social life is mostly just me, a mechanical keyboard, and way too much cold brew. My neighbor across the street is Arthur. Arthur is a gold standard of suburban NPCs. He's about 55, drives a spotless silver Camry, and spends an ungodly amount of time edging his lawn. We had that typical American male relationship, the chin nod, the "how's it going, Art?" The living the dream mark response. Total script, total comfort. Until last month. I was grinding on a Q4 projection that was due at 8 a.m. My eyes were burning. The house was dead silent, and the streetlights outside were casting these long, orange, lonely shadows across my office wall. I stood up to stretch my back and glanced out the window. The clock on my taskbar hit 2:17 a.m. Right on cue, Arthur's front door opened. It wasn't a "I'm letting the dog out" kind of vibe. Arthur stepped out wearing a button-down flannel shirt, tucked into jeans, with a belt. He looked like he was headed to a casual brunch, not stepping into a dark driveway in the middle of the night. In his right hand, he held one of those heavy-duty mag lights, the ones that look like they could double as a blunt force weapon. He didn't look around. He didn't check for witnesses. He walked straight to the edge of his driveway, looked at his wristwatch, and waited. At exactly 2:18, he crossed the street toward our neighbor Miller's house. He walked up to Miller's Ford F-150, clicked the flashlight on, and pressed the lens flush against the driver's side window. He began to move the light in slow, rhythmic circles. He wasn't looking for a laptop or loose change. He was inspecting the upholstery, the dashboard, the floor mats. He stood there for 5 minutes, just staring into a locked, empty truck. Then he moved to the next house, and the next. I stood there in my dark office, half hidden by the curtain, feeling that prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. It wasn't scary, yet it was just weird, like watching a glitch in a video game. He finished the block, turned around, walked back into his house, and the lights went out. The next morning, the sun was out, the birds were chirping, and Arthur was out there again, trimming his hedges with surgical precision. I felt like a conspiracy theorist. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe the blue light from my monitor had finally melted my brain. I decided to test the waters. I went out to check my mail just as he was putting his shears away. "Hey, Arthur." I called out, trying to sound like a normal human being. "Late night for you too? I thought I saw you out here around 2. Arthur stopped. He turned his head slowly, and for a second his face was a complete blank, just a mask of skin. Then the neighbor mask clicked back on. He gave a short, dry chuckle. 2 a.m.? Gosh, Mark, I'm usually sawing logs by 10. Must have been the shadows. Or maybe those teenagers down the street finally found some mischief." He smiled, but his eyes didn't move. They were locked on mine, flat and unblinking. "Yeah," I muttered, feeling a sudden surge of embarrassment. "Probably just the shadows. Take it easy, Art." I didn't want to look the next night. I really didn't. But 2:15 a.m. rolled around, and my body just moved to the window. 2:17 a.m. The door opened. Same shirt, same jeans, same heavy mag light. This time, he didn't start with Miller's truck. He walked directly across the street, stepped onto my driveway, and stopped inches away from my car. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. He didn't just shine the light this time. He took a small notebook out of his back pocket. He pressed the light against my driver's window and began to write. Then he walked to the front of the car, knelt down, and shined the light into the grill. He stayed there for 10 minutes. I could see the steam of his breath on my windshield. At one point, he leaned his forehead against the glass, peering into the darkness of my back seat like he was looking for a lost soul. I couldn't take it. The awkwardness was being replaced by this cold, vibrating fear. I grabbed my phone, opened the front door, and stepped out onto the porch. Arthur, what the hell are you doing? I expected him to jump. I expected him to run. He didn't. He slowly stood up from his kneeling position, wiped a bit of dust off his jeans, and turned the flashlight toward the ground so he wouldn't blind me. "Oh, hello, Mark," he said. His voice was terrifyingly casual. "I was just checking the seals on your windshield. They look a bit weathered. You should really look into that. Water damage in a car this age is a silent killer." I stared at him, my mouth half open. It's 2 a.m, man. You're on my property. You told me yesterday you were asleep by 10. Arthur took a step closer. He was still smiling, but it wasn't a neighborly smile anymore. It was a smile of a man who was explaining a very simple math problem to a very stupid child. "Mark, we all have our roles. Some of us watch the screens. Some of us watch the perimeter. It's better if you just go back inside and finish your projections. You're behind on the Henderson account, aren't you?" The air left my lungs. I hadn't told him about the Henderson account. I hadn't told anyone except my boss on a private Slack channel. "Go to bed, Mark," Arthur said softly. "I've got the 2:17 shift. You've got the 9 a.m. Let's not mix them up again." I didn't sleep. I locked every door, closed every blind, and sat on the floor of my hallway. The next day, I didn't go out. I watched him through the peephole. He was normal. He waved at the mailman. He helped Mrs. Gable carry her groceries. He was a perfect neighbor. I started searching online, local forums, next door, apps, anything. I found a post from 5 years ago in a town 3 counties over. It was a grainy photo of a man in a flannel shirt, standing next to a car with a flashlight. The caption read, "Does anyone know this guy? He comes out every night at the same time. Police say he isn't breaking any laws because he doesn't touch the handles." The comments were a graveyard of "he's just a kook" and "mind your business." But one comment stuck out. It was from a deleted user. He's not looking for what's inside the cars. He's looking for the reflections. If the reflections don't match the sky, he knows the simulation is lagging. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Okay, I thought, I'm dealing with a crazy person who thinks we live in the Matrix. Fine, I can handle crazy. But then I looked at the photo again. I zoomed in on the car the man was inspecting. In the reflection of the car's window, you could see the street lights, the trees, and the man with the flashlight. But in the reflection of the car's side mirror, the man wasn't there. It was just an empty street. Tonight is Tuesday. It's 2:10 a.m. I'm sitting at my desk, but I'm not working. I've turned off all the lights in my house. I've even unplugged the fridge so I can hear everything. I'm looking at my own car through the window. I've been thinking about what he said. The Henderson account. How did he know? Why the cars? 2:16 a.m. I see his front door handle turn. Arthur steps out. Flannel shirt. Tucked in. Mag light in hand. He walks across the street. He doesn't go to Miller's truck. He doesn't go to the Gable sedan. He walks straight to my driveway. But he doesn't look at my car tonight. He stops at the edge of my lawn and turns the flashlight upward. He aims the beam directly at my office window, the one I'm standing behind. He clicks the light on. The beam is so bright it feels like it's burning through the glass. I freeze. I don't move a muscle. I'm a shadow in a dark room. There's no way he can see me. Then my phone on the desk vibrates. A text message from an unknown number. "You're standing too close to the glass, Mark. The rendering is clipping. Move back 3 steps so I can finish the check." I look down at the phone, then back at the window. Arthur isn't looking at the car anymore. He's looking at his watch. At exactly 2:25 a.m., he clicks the light off, gives my dark window a polite, neighborly nod, and walks back to his house. I haven't moved. I'm still standing here. I want to leave. I want to pack my bags and drive until the gas runs out. But I looked at my car keys on the desk, and then I looked at the reflection of the keys in the polished wood of my desk. There are no keys in the reflection, just a blank, smooth surface. Arthur was right. I'm behind on the Henderson account, and I think I'm going to stay inside today. It's safer in here, where the rendering is still holding up. I think I'll wait for 2:17 tomorrow. I need to ask him if he has any tips of the lag. That neighbor was weird, right? But this next family story is just pure toxic. Check this out. I was 26 when I realized my family wasn't just quirky. It was a carefully constructed theater where my younger brother, Leo, was a star, and I was the stagehand whose only job was to keep the lights on and shut the hell up. Leo is 23, but if you saw him at a family dinner, you'd swear he was a toddler in a grown man's body. He's the baby of the family. In my mom's eyes, Leo can do no wrong, even when he's literally setting the house on fire. It started small, him forgetting his wallet every time we went out, him accidentally breaking my PlayStation when we were kids. But as we hit our 20s, the favoritism turned into something much more suffocating. The peak of this toxic cycle happened last Thanksgiving. I'd been working 60-hour weeks at a marketing firm, trying to climb the ladder, and I was exhausted. I drove 4 hours back to my parents' house, craving a quiet meal and maybe a bit of recognition for promotion I just landed. But the moment I walked through the door, the air felt heavy. "Oh, Mark, you're here," my mom said, barely looking up from the stove. "Go help Leo in the living room. He's having a day." A day. For Leo, a day meant he quit another job because his boss didn't understand his creative vision. And now he was sulking on the couch, drinking my dad's expensive scotch at 2 p.m. "Hey, Leo," I said, dropping my bags. "Move the TV, Mark," he muttered, eyes glued to his phone. "The glare is annoying me." "No, hello. No, congrats on promotion." Just a demand. I ignored him and went to the kitchen to help Mom. Throughout the afternoon, I watched the same old movie play out. Leo made snide comments about the food. He complained that the house was too hot. At one point, he reached across the table and knocked over a gravy boat, staining a handmade lace tablecloth that had been in our family for 3 generations. "Leo, watch it." I snapped. "It's just a cloth, Mark. Don't be so dramatic," my mom whispered, rushing over with a wet rag. She didn't look at Leo with anger. She looked at him with pity. "He's stressed, honey. He's going through a lot right now." Stressed? He'd been playing video games for 3 weeks while I'd been paying his phone bill until he got back on his feet. The tension kept building until dessert. My dad started asking me about my new role, and for a second, I felt like a human being. I started explaining the new project I was leading, feeling a tiny spark of pride. "It sounds boring," Leo interrupted, leaning back in his chair. "Imagine caring that much about selling soap to people who don't want it. It's kind of pathetic, honestly." The table went silent. I felt the heat rising in my neck. "Leo, that's enough," my dad said, but his voice lacked any real bite. "No, it's true," Leo continued, looking directly at me. "Mark's always been the corporate shill. No soul, just a paycheck. Probably why your girlfriend left you, too. You're just empty." My ex-girlfriend had left me 2 months prior, and it was still an open wound. The room felt like it was shrinking. I looked at my mom, expecting her to shut him down. Instead, she reached out and patted Leo's hand. "He's just being honest, Mark. You know Leo, he doesn't have a filter. He's a truth teller." Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was a cold, quiet break. I stood up so fast my chair scraped harshly against the hardwood floor. "A truth teller?" I said, my voice shaking. "He's a 30-year-old loser who lives on your couch and insults the person who's currently paying his car insurance. He's not a truth teller, Mom. He's a parasite, and you're the one feeding him." The silence that followed was deafening. I've never seen my mom's face turn that shade of red. She didn't look at Leo. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated disgust. "How dare you," she hissed. "How dare you speak to your brother that way in this house? After everything he's been through? After the struggle he's had finding his path? You come in here with your fancy job and your ego, and you think you can look down on us." "I'm not looking down on you. I'm stating a fact." "Leave," my dad said. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. "You're ruining the holiday, Mark. You're always so aggressive. You need to go cool off and apologize to your brother when you found some perspective." I looked at Leo. He was smirking. He literally had a piece of pumpkin pie halfway to his mouth, and he was smirking. He knew he'd won. He could burn the house down, and they'd apologize to him for the smoke. I didn't say another word. I grabbed my keys and my coat. I walked out the front door and as I was walking to my car, I heard the muffled sound of laughter from inside. My mom was saying something about how Mark always was a difficult one. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I waited for a text. Sorry. Come back inside. Nothing. An hour into my drive home, my phone buzzed. It was a Venmo notification. Leo sent you $1. Message, for the salt. Drink some water, bro. You're way too salty. I pulled over on the side of the highway and blocked all of them. My mom, my dad, and Leo. I sat there in the dark, watching the headlights of other cars zoom past, realizing that I wasn't leaving a family dinner. I was escaping a cult of one. The weirdest part? For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I just felt tired. I realized that in their story, I would always be the villain, no matter how many perfect things I did. So, fine. If I'm the villain, I might as well enjoy the peace and quiet. I haven't spoken to them in 6 months. My mom left a voicemail last week from a different number, not asking how I was, but asking if I could stop being immature, because Leo needed a co-signer for a new apartment. I deleted it without finishing the message. The rendering of that family had finally crashed, and I wasn't going to be the one to reboot it. Crazy family drama. But work can be even worse sometimes. This next guy literally tried to become me. Let's look at the next one. I've been at Sterling & Associates for 5 years. It's a mid-size architectural consultancy in Chicago, the kind of place where the carpets are neutral gray and the coffee is always just a little too burnt. I'm a senior project manager. My life is built on precision, blueprints, deadlines, and a very specific way of organizing my digital workspace. I'm 34. I wear charcoal chinos, and I take pride in being the person people go to when a project is falling apart. Then came Caleb. Caleb was hired as a junior associate 4 months ago. On paper, he was perfect. Ivy League degree, glowing references, and a smile that felt like it was designed by a marketing team. My boss, Sarah, asked me to mentor him. He's got a lot of raw talent, Mark, she told me. Just help him find the Sterling rhythm. The first week was normal. He sat in the cubicle next to mine, took diligent notes, and asked smart questions. But by the second week, the mirroring started. It began with the coffee. I have a very specific routine. A double-shot espresso with a splash of oat milk from the local shop down the street at exactly 8:45 a.m. On Monday, Caleb showed up at 8:45 a.m. with the exact same order. Great minds, right? He said, holding up the cup. I didn't think much of it. It's a popular shop. Then it was the clothes. I have a rotation of 5 tailored Oxford shirts, mostly soft blues and whites. That Wednesday, Caleb showed up in a blue Oxford that was nearly identical to mine, paired with the same brand of chinos I wear. Again, I brushed it off. Subconscious influence is a real thing in offices. People want to fit in. But then he started stealing my voice. During a brainstorming session for the Riverside project, I used a specific phrase I've been saying for years. We need to ensure the aesthetic integrity doesn't compromise the structure utility. It's my little mantra. 10 minutes later, Sarah asked Caleb for his thoughts on a different section of the building. Well, Caleb said, leaning back and cross his legs exactly the way I do. The most important thing is that we ensure the aesthetic integrity doesn't compromise the structure utility. The room went quiet for a split second. I felt a weird jolt of electricity run down my spine. I looked at him, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Sarah, wearing my expression, that slight confident tilt of the head I use when I'm making a point. Sarah nodded. Exactly, Caleb. Glad you're on the same page as Mark. Over the next month, it escalated from flattering to unsettling. He changed his email signature to match my font and layout. He started using my specific set of Excel shortcuts that I'd customized over years. One afternoon, I walked past his desk and saw his screen. He had my LinkedIn profile open. He wasn't just looking at it. He was studying my About section. The following Monday, he updated his own bio. He didn't copy-paste it, but he used the same adjectives, the same sentence structure, the same tone of measured professional ambition. The awkwardness turned into a slow-boiling paranoia. I started testing him. I wore a bright red tie one Tuesday, Something I never do. On Wednesday, Caleb was wearing a red tie. I started using a weird, archaic word in meetings, orthogonal, just to see what would happen. By Friday, Caleb was telling a client that our approach was decidedly orthogonal. Is it just me? I asked my work friend, Elena, at lunch, does Caleb seem like he's trying to be me? Elena bit into her sandwich and looked at me with pity. Mark, honestly, everyone's noticed. It's creepy. He even walks like you now. That weird little stride you have when you're in a hurry, he does it. But Sarah loves him. She thinks he's your protégé. That was the problem. Sarah didn't see a stalker. She saw a success story. She saw a junior who was absorbing the Sterling culture faster than anyone in the firm's history. The breaking point happened during the pitch for the Miller Levin account. This was a $2 million deal. I'd spent 6 weeks on the deck. I'd written the script, designed the visuals, and practiced the delivery until I could do it in my sleep. An hour before presentation, Caleb came into my office. Hey, Mark, Sarah asked me to take the lead on the first half of the pitch, he said. He was leaning against my doorframe, wearing my favorite navy blazer. She wants to see if I can handle the pressure. My stomach turned. The first half? That's the core of the strategy, Caleb. I wrote that. I know, he said, and for the first time, the nice guy mask slipped just a fraction. There was something cold and predatory in his eyes. And I know it by heart. Don't worry, I'll do you justice. In the boardroom, Caleb didn't just give the presentation. He performed me. He used my hand gestures. He paused at the exact moments I usually pause for effect. He even told the same self-deprecating joke about my first year in architecture that I've used as an icebreaker for years. The clients were enthralled. Sarah was beaming. I sat at the end of the table, feeling like a ghost. I was watching a younger, better version of myself take credit for my own brain. I have to say, the lead client said afterward, Caleb, your vision for this project is remarkably mature. It's rare to find someone so young with such a grounded perspective. I've had a great teacher, Caleb said, glancing at me with a look of pure, triumphant malice. I started to doubt my own reality. I went home that night and looked in the mirror, wondering if I was the one who was a copy. Was I actually this person? Or was I just a collection of habits that anyone could pick up and wear like a suit? I decided I had to end it. I couldn't go to HR. He wears the same shirts as me sounds insane. I couldn't go to Sarah. She thought he was a star. I had to make him fail by being himself. The next project was a small, boring renovation for a local library. I deliberately created a dummy folder on a shared drive labeled Final Strategy. Do not open. Inside, I put a series of architectural choices that were technically sound but aesthetically hideous, gaudy, outdated 90s mall vibes, mismatched materials, and an absurdly inefficient floor plan. I waited. I saw Caleb's user icon hover over that folder for 3 hours on Thursday. On Friday morning, Sarah called a snap meeting. Caleb has some innovative ideas for the library project that he wants to fast track, she said. Caleb stood up. He looked confident. He looked like me. He began to pitch the mall core disaster. He talked about retro chic and disruptive spatial flow. He used all my buzzwords to justify a design that looked like a fever dream. I watched Sarah's face. The smile slowly faded. The clients we were internalizing for the library board looked horrified. Caleb, Sarah interrupted, her voice cold. This looks like a food court from 1994. What happened to your aesthetic integrity? Caleb blinked. He looked at me, then back at the screen. He was lost. Without my actual thoughts to guide him, he was just an actor who had forgotten his lines. He tried to pivot, using my measured tone, but the words coming out were nonsense. He started sweating. His mirroring began to glitch. He was twitching his pen, a habit I don't have. I thought we were going for a bold, nostalgic direction, he stammered. It's a library, Caleb, not a Sparrow, Sarah snapped. The meeting ended in a disaster for him, but he wasn't fired. He was just reassigned to the archive department, the basement. Yesterday, I had to go down there to find an old blueprint. The basement is a maze of rolling shelves and dim, flickering lights. I found the file I needed and turned to leave when I heard a sound from the corner cubicle. It was Caleb. He was sitting in the dark, staring at a monitor. I walked past, trying to be invisible, but I couldn't help but glance at his screen. He wasn't working on the archives. He had a video open. It was a recording of the Riverside pitch from 2 months ago. It was me speaking. Caleb was sitting there, his face inches from the glass. He was moving his lips in perfect sync with mine, silent, like a ventriloquist dummy. We need to ensure the aesthetic integrity doesn't compromise the structure utility. I heard my own recorded voice say. Caleb whispered the words at the exact same time. Then he reached up and touched the screen, tracing the outline of my jawline with his finger. He didn't look up when I walked away. He didn't have to. He was busy becoming. I went back to my office, locked the door, and changed my email font. It's a small start. But as I sat there, I realized I'd stopped using my favorite coffee shop. I'd stopped wearing my Oxford shirts. I'd stopped using my aesthetic integrity mantra. I'm changing everything about myself just to get away from him. But the more I change, the more space I leave for him to fill. He isn't just copying me anymore. He's waiting for me to vacate my own life so he can move in. And the worst part? Today, Sarah told me I looked tired and not quite myself. Maybe you should take a week off, Mark, she suggested. Caleb told me he'd be happy to cover your desk while you're gone. He says he knows exactly how you like things done. The office was a nightmare, but home should be a safe place. Except, as this next roommate story shows, that's not always true. The apartment was perfect on paper. A 2-bedroom in a pre-war building in Brooklyn with crown molding, original hardwood floors, and a rent that didn't consume 70% of my paycheck. The catch? I had to share it with someone I'd met on a roommate finding app. His name was Elias. He was 29, worked in archival restoration, and was the quietest human being I'd ever encountered. He was tall, thin, and had this way of moving to the hallway that made no sound. For the first 3 months, it was a dream. We were like 2 ships passing in the night, occasionally exchanging a "how's it going" in the kitchen. But then the shift started. It began with my toothbrush. I'm a creature of habit, 33 years old and stuck in my ways. I always leave my toothbrush on the right side of the ceramic holder, tilted at a 45-degree angle, so it can air dry properly. One morning, I walked in and it was on the left, not just moved, but bone dry, as if it hadn't been used, even though I'd brushed my teeth 6 hours prior. "Hey, Elias," I said that evening while he was stirring a pot of gray-looking soup. "Did you move my stuff in the bathroom while cleaning?" He didn't turn around. He just kept stirring. "I haven't been in the bathroom since yesterday morning, Mark. I used the gym showers, remember?" I did remember. It made sense. I figured I was just tired. Work at the agency had been brutal, and my brain was basically mush by 7 p.m. I went to bed and forgot about it. 3 days later, I came home to find my copy of The Great Gatsby, a book I'd left on my nightstand with a bookmark on page 84, sitting on the kitchen table. The bookmark was gone. "Elias, did you borrow my book?" I asked. He looked at the book, then at me, with a look of genuine confusion. "I don't read fiction, Mark. You know that. I only read technical manuals. Maybe you brought it out here for breakfast and forgot." "I don't eat breakfast at the table, Elias. I eat over the sink like a savage." He laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Well, memory is a tricky thing. You've been working late. Stress does weird things to the hippocampus." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then things got aggressive. I have a collection of vintage wristwatches. Nothing crazy expensive, but they're my pride and joy. I keep them in a velvet-lined box in my top dresser drawer. One Friday, I went to put on my 1960s Omega, and the box was empty. My heart stopped. I checked the drawer. Nothing. I checked under the bed. Nothing. I stormed into the living room. "Elias, my watches are gone. Did someone come in here? Was there a break-in?" Elias was sitting in his usual armchair, staring at a blank TV screen. He didn't even blink. "Mark, what are you talking about? You don't own any watches. You've told me multiple times you hate wearing things on your wrists. You said it interferes with your typing." I stared at him. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. "What? No, I've worn a watch every single day since we moved in. You've commented on the Omega. You said the ticking was loud when we were watching a movie. Elias stood up slowly. He walked over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. His fingers were ice cold. Mark, buddy, I think you're having a breakdown. You don't have an Omega. You don't have a watch box. Look at your dresser. Is there even space for a box there? I ran back to my room. I looked at the top of my dresser. It was covered in a thick layer of dust. There were no indentations where a box would have sat. No scratches. Just dust. I felt like the floor was tilting. I knew I had those watches. I could feel the weight of the Omega on my wrist and my mind. But the dust said I was a liar. I started to lose my grip. Every day, something else was corrected. My favorite blue hoodie? Elias claimed I'd never owned it. My sister's phone number? Elias told me I was an only child. When I tried to call her, my phone told me the number didn't exist. I checked my call logs. There were no outgoing calls to her, just hours of calls to work and Elias. I decided I was either going crazy or I was being targeted. I bought a small hidden camera, the kind that looks like a USB wall charger, and plugged it into the outlet facing my bedroom door. I told Elias I was going away for the weekend to clear my head. Instead, I booked a cheap motel 3 blocks away and sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop, watching the live feed. For 6 hours, nothing happened. The apartment was a tomb. Then at 3 a.m., the door to Elias's room opened. He didn't walk. He shuffled. He was wearing my blue hoodie, the one he said didn't exist. He walked into my room and stood in the center of the floor. He didn't turn on the light. He just stood there in the dark for 45 minutes. Then he opened my dresser drawer. He pulled out the velvet watch box. My watch box. He opened it, took out the Omega, and put it on. He admired it in the moonlight. But then he did something that made me drop my laptop. He pulled a small spray bottle from his pocket. He began to spray a fine mist of gray powder over my dresser. Then he took a soft brush and meticulously leveled the powder until it looked like a perfect, undisturbed layer of years-old dust. He was creating the evidence of my insanity. He spent the next 3 hours editing my room. He took my books and put them in a box labeled Elias's Storage. He took the photos of my sister off the wall and replaced them with generic prints of landscapes. He even used a laptop, my laptop, to go into my contacts and delete my sister's entry, replacing it with a dead-end number. I watched him sit at my desk and practice my signature. He did it over and over again on a legal pad. Mark Davis, Mark Davis, Mark Davis. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't just gaslighting me. He was erasing me. He was preparing to take over the lease, the identity, the life. I checked the motel door 3 times to make sure it was locked. I was terrified. If I went back, what would he do? If I called the police, what would I show them? The camera feed was on my laptop, but Elias was an archival restoration expert. He probably knew exactly how to claim the footage was AI-generated or tampered with. I watched the screen again. Elias was now lying in my bed. He had his eyes wide open, staring directly into the hidden camera. He hadn't seen me plug it in, but somehow he knew. He leaned forward until his face filled the entire frame. His eyes were huge, unblinking, reflecting the tiny red light of the lens. "You're not supposed to be watching, Mark," he whispered. His voice was crystal clear, as if he were sitting right next to me in the motel room. The rendering is much smoother when you're not trying to find the seams. Then he reached out and unplugged the charger. The screen went black. I didn't go back to the apartment. I didn't even go back for my clothes. I took the train to my parents' house in Jersey. The parents Elias told me were dead in a car accident I didn't remember. When I got there, I knocked on the door. My mother answered. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. "Mark? Oh my God, Mark. Where have you been? We haven't heard from you in months. We called the police. We went to your apartment. But that nice man Elias said you'd moved to Oregon for a new job." "Mom, I've been right there." "In Brooklyn?" "No, honey," she said, pulling me inside. Elias showed us the emails. "You sent us that long letter about needing space, about how you were changing your name and starting over." He even sent us photos of your new house in Portland. She showed me her phone. There were dozens of photos. It was me, or someone who looked exactly like me, standing in front of a small craftsman home in a rainy city. I was smiling. I looked happy. But in every single photo, the man was wearing my 1960s Omega watch. And on his wrist, just below the watch, was a small tattoo I've never had. A string of numbers. 217. I'm sitting in my childhood bedroom now. I've changed all my passwords. I've locked my credit. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm the one who's out of sync. Every time I look in the mirror, I have to check my wrist. So far, no tattoo. But this morning, I woke up and found a layer of gray dust on my nightstand. And when I tried to call the police to report Elias, the operator told me that there is no record of an Elias living at my Brooklyn address. The only person on the lease for the last 3 years was me. The operator asked me if I was feeling okay. She said I sounded distorted. I think I'm going to go for a walk. I need to see if the trees still have reflections in the puddles. If they don't, I think I'm just going to stop walking and wait for the next update. And finally, a tech story. This guy accidentally connected to his neighbor's smart TV, and it ended in absolute madness. I've always said that privacy is a myth, but I never thought I'd be the one holding the shovel to bury it. I'm 29, living in a cramped studio in Seattle. The walls in this building are paper thin. I can hear my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, sneezing, and I'm pretty sure he can hear me regretting my life choices every time I open a bag of chips at midnight. Henderson is your typical get-off-my-lawn type, even though we don't have a lawn. He's about 60, always wears a beige cardigan, and looks like he hasn't smiled since the Clinton administration. He's the kind of guy who organizes his recycling by weight and stares at the mailman like he's a foreign invader. It all started on a rainy Tuesday. I bought a new soundbar, a cheap Sony knockoff, and was trying to sync it to my phone via the home network. I opened the Bluetooth and screen mirroring settings on my phone, expecting to see Sony HT100. Instead, a list of available devices popped up. Living room TV, bedroom Fire Stick, and Henderson Den Ultra HD80. My fingers slipped. I didn't mean to hit it, but I did. Suddenly, my phone screen went black and a notification popped up. Connected to Henderson Den Ultra HD80. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled to disconnect, but then I realized the connection was two-way. Because we were on the same unsecured building guest Wi-Fi, the landlord is a cheapskate who thinks WPA3 is a boy band. I could see his active dashboard. A small window mirrored on my phone showed what was playing on his 80-inch beast of a TV. He was watching a YouTube tutorial on how to tell if your neighbor is a government operative. I should have stopped. I really should have. But the sheer absurdity of seeing this grumpy old man in a beige cardigan worrying about operatives was too much. I sat back on my couch, the blue light of my phone illuminating my face, and I started to watch. It was like a drug. I was a digital voyeur, peering into the psyche of a man who thought the world was out to get him. The first few days were mostly just awkward. I'd log on around 8 p.m. and see his search history. It was a chaotic mess of deep state conspiracies and aggressively specific health concerns. Why does my left earlobe itch only on Thursdays? Average cost of a bunker in Idaho with anti-radiation ventilation. Can cats see ghosts, or is my tabby just an asshole? Symptoms of electromagnetic hypersensitivity from 5G routers. I'd sit there, eating my ramen, laughing quietly at the screen. It felt like a sitcom. I called him the subject in my head. I thought I was just witnessing the harmless eccentricities of a lonely man. I even started anticipating his viewing hours. 7 p.m. was news, which he shouted at. 8:30 p.m. was a conspiracy rabbit hole, and 10 p.m. was Ancient Aliens reruns until he fell asleep. Then the escalation started. By the second week, the searches shifted from weird to unsettling. He stopped looking for bunkers and started looking for me. Not me by name, but the man in 4B. 4B work schedule. Why is he home at 2 p.m.? Why does 4B type so loud at night? Is it Morse code? Is 4BS blue light a signal to the mothership or just a cheap LED? How to jam a neighbor's Wi-Fi without attracting the FCC. I stopped laughing. I looked at the wall separating our units. I could hear the faint murmur of his TV, the same TV I was currently monitoring. He was sitting right there, inches away, obsessing over the sound of my mechanical keyboard. Every time I hit enter, I wondered if he was writing it down in some dusty notebook. The awkwardness turned into a cold, vibrating paranoia. I decided to mess with him. It was a mistake, a classic bored adult mistake. But at the time, it felt like the only way to reclaim some power. If he thought I was a signal, I'd give him a signal. I waited until I saw him open his smart TV's voice command. On my phone, I saw the little microphone icon ripple. I tapped the remote input feature on the mirroring app and typed into his search bar, "I see you, Arthur." I heard a muffled gah and a heavy thud from next door, like he jumped and knocked over a lamp. On the screen, the YouTube video he was watching, something about lizard people in the British royal family, was replaced by my text. I felt a rush of adrenaline. It was intoxicating. I typed again, "The OAT milk in your fridge is expired. Drink the water, Arthur." I heard his chair scrape across the floor. A few seconds later, the connection dropped. He'd pulled the plug. Literally. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like Henderson coming for me with a beige-colored axe. But the next morning, he was in the hallway, looking more tired than usual. He didn't even glare at me. He just looked broken. His skin was the color of old parchment, and his cardigan was buttoned wrong. "Morning, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice cracking like a teenager's. He looked at me, and for a split second, the NPC mask fell away. His eyes were bloodshot, the pupils pinpricks of pure terror. "The walls have ears, Mark, and the glass is eyes. Don't trust the smart appliances. They've been compromised. The firmware is not from here." He shuffled past me, smelling like mothballs, ozone, and unwashed fear. I should have deleted the app. I should have factory reset my phone. I should have moved to a different state. That night, I saw his TV back online. He hadn't changed the Wi-Fi. He'd just bought a new, even more advanced smart TV, a Henderson Den Ultra HD 9E Pro. I logged in. The mirroring started. He wasn't searching for conspiracies anymore. He was using the TV's built-in camera, a feature I didn't even know it had, to record himself. He was sitting on his couch, staring directly into the lens. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hair was a mess, and he had duct tape over his microwave and toaster. "Log 42, he whispered. The audio came through my phone speakers, crisp and terrifyingly high fidelity. The entity in 4B has started communicating via the interface. It knows about the milk. It's analyzing my dietary habits. It's trying to build a profile to replace me. It's using the 217 protocol to rewrite my history." He leaned in closer. His face filled my phone screen, every pore a gaping crater in the 4K resolution. If you're watching this, you need to know the rendering is failing. The world isn't as solid as they want you to think. I saw the edge of the world today while I was at the grocery store. The frozen piece section just ended. It was nothing but gray static and floating lines of code. The clerk didn't even notice. He just kept scanning the peas, scanning the static. I felt the room spin, the rendering, the same word from the stories I'd been reading late at night, the same word Elias had used. My brain tried to reject it, to call it coincidence, but the logic was failing. "I'm going to attempt a hard reset," Henderson said, his voice trembling. On the screen, I watched him stand up and walk toward the TV. He reached behind the set. I expected him to pull the power cord. Instead, he pulled out a long, thin surgical needle. He didn't aim for the TV. He aimed for the corner of his own eye. "The ocular sensors are the primary intake for the simulation," he muttered, his eyes wide and vacant. "If I disable the sensors, the server has to reboot my local instance. It's the only way to get back to 2016, before the patch." "Arthur, stop!" I screamed, jumping up and pounding on the wall with both fists. "It's me. It's Mark. I was just joking. It was a prank, man. Just a stupid app." The murmuring stopped. On my phone screen, I saw him freeze. He slowly turned his head toward the wall. Toward me. He walked to the wall and pressed his ear against it. I stood on my side, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would crack a rib. We were separated by 2 inches of drywall and a decade of mutual silence. I could hear his shallow, ragged breathing. "Mark," he whispered. "Yes, it's me. Please, don't do anything crazy. I'm just a guy with a phone. I'm not an operative. I'm not an entity. I'm just 4B. There was a long silence. A silence so heavy it felt like it was crushing the air out of the room. Then a soft, dry laugh. "Oh, Mark, you think you're the one doing the mirroring." I looked down at my phone. The screen hadn't gone black. The mirroring app was still running, but the image had changed. It wasn't showing Henderson's living room anymore. It was showing mine. I saw myself standing in my studio, phone in hand, looking at the wall. The perspective was from high up, near the ceiling, exactly where my smart smoke detector was installed. I saw the back of my own head. I saw the pile of laundry in the corner. I saw the coffee stain on the rug. I saw a small text box appear over my own image on the screen, like a YouTube caption or a developer console. Subject 4B has realized the interface. Logic loop detected. Initiate protocol 217. I dropped the phone. It shattered on the floor, the screen spiderwebbing into 1,000 shards, but the audio kept playing. "The rendering is clipping, Mark." Henderson's voice came through the broken speaker, but wasn't coming from the wall anymore. It was coming from the air itself. It was coming from my own throat. "You were standing too close to the glass. You looked at the brushstrokes instead of the painting." I ran for the door. I grabbed the handle and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. It was solid, like it was just a shape carved into the wall, a door-shaped piece of wood with no mechanism behind it. The brass handle felt like cold plastic molded into my hand. I turned back to the room. My bed, my desk, my ramen bowl, it all started to lose detail. The textures were smoothing out, turning into that flat, gray static Henderson had described. The resolution of my life was dropping. My bookshelf was now just a brown block. My cat wasn't a cat anymore, just a fuzzy orange sphere that didn't move. I looked at my hands. My fingers were merging together, the skin becoming a featureless, low-poly peach-colored glove. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. I didn't have a mouth anymore, just a texture where a mouth should be. I scrambled for the window, desperate for a breath of real Seattle air. I threw open the blinds. There was no street, no rain, no Space Needle, just an endless, shimmering grid of blue lines stretching into a black void. It looked like a 1980s wireframe landscape. And there, standing on the grid just outside my window, was Arthur Henderson. He wasn't wearing the beige cardigan. He was wearing a sleek metallic suit that pulsed with a soft bioluminescent light. He held a clipboard, the same kind of notebook the neighbor in the first story had used. He looked younger, sharper. His eyes were glowing blue. "Don't worry, Mark," he said, tapping a silver pen against the glass of my window. "We're almost done with the 217 check. You just had a bit of a memory leak, a bit of a logic loop. We'll have you back in the simulation by 9 a.m. You have a big presentation on the Henderson account, remember?" He winked at me. "By the way," he added, "you were right about the milk. It was disgusting. We'll update the flavor profile in the next patch." He tapped the window 3 times. Clink, clink, clink. The world went white. Not the white of light, but the white of an empty document. I woke up on my couch. My phone was in my hand. No cracks. No broken screen. I checked the time, 8:45 a.m. I had a notification. Connected to Henderson Den Ultra HD80. I disconnected immediately, my fingers trembling so hard I almost dropped the device. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to get some water, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I passed a mirror in the hallway and stopped. I looked at my wrist. There, in faint, red ink that looked like it was still drying under the skin, was a tattoo. 217. I went to the fridge to get the milk. I poured a glass, my heart in my throat. I took a sip and almost gagged. It was sour, vile, metallic. I checked the carton. The expiration date was tomorrow. But as I looked at the date, the number started to shift and vibrate. The May 13th blurred and reformed into a different set of characters. Stay in the lines, Mark. Render progress, 98%. I poured the milk down the drain. I'm sitting at my desk now, typing this out for you guys. I can hear Henderson next door. He's sneezing. Achoo. I wait. My hands are hovering over the keys. Achoo. On the third sneeze, I hear a voice, not from the wall, but from the internal speakers of my own brain, vibrating against my skull. Bless you, Subject 4B. Get to work. Sarah is waiting. I'm going to go to my presentation now. I hope the Henderson account likes my orthogonal approach. I've heard the rendering is much better in the boardroom, but I can't help but notice that the sky outside my office window is the exact same shade of blue as the lines on the grid. And when I look at the people on the street, none of them have reflections in the puddles. They're just walking. I'll update you after the meeting, if I'm still here. If the 217 shift doesn't delete this post first, just check your own Wi-Fi settings. If you see a device you don't recognize, don't click it. You might not like what's mirroring you back.